So next up, our first speaker of the night, Manny. And we're going to just plug you in.
Sure, yeah. I'm just going to do it quick.
So Manny's presenting off his phone today. Should be interesting.
I got to ask, is this less than 10 minutes?
The actual talk?
Good question.
Great question. The short answer is no. We good? All right. Can you guys hear me without me using this? Is it fine? Yeah? Because I just don't want to have things in both hands, but that's okay. So yes, I'm Manny Elwar. I'm a developer evangelist at BlackBerry. Hands up if you don't know what a developer evangelist does. Don't be shy. I didn't know when I applied. All right. So what a developer evangelist does is we, in effect, preach the platform to prospective developers. My goal is to make it as easily as possible for developers and people that have ideas in mind to bring their applications over to the BlackBerry 10 platform specifically, but BlackBerry as a whole if you're still developing in BlackBerry OS. I travel, I do events such as meetups like these, or I do conferences, I do a lot of blogging and creating videos, and my goal is to help you guys realize the potential of BlackBerry. But my talk today is not focused strictly on BlackBerry, though I will get into some BlackBerry specific things at some point. The goal is on reaching any audience in 10 minutes, and sorry if there's confusion, it's not meant to be that the talk is 10 minutes, it's that within 10 minutes you can reach a new audience. Although talking about reaching a new audience can be obviously ad nauseum, so I'm going to put a couple of restrictions on there. The first is going to be strictly mobile, and the second it's going to be solely focused on mainly cross-platform development, though I will get into some other aspects as well. So the first thing is why, uh-oh. Hello? It's there?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry guys, might have been just a loose cable. I'll try to be a little more delicate. Okay, so why do you want to reach a new audience? In mobile, how many mobile developers are in the room right now? Okay, so, and this will apply for you because I know everyone's thinking mobile is what's hot, right? So greater reach is the number one reason why you want to go and reach a new audience, is you want more people to be using your app. It's as simple as that, and it's pretty obvious. The reason being, you want to do one of these three things. One is increase your revenue stream. We're in this at the end of the day to make a living, most of us anyways, unless you're a hobbyist, and the one thing you want to do is find new ways to tap into more revenue. And this is obviously reaching a whole new audience is obviously a way to get your application into more people's hands and to increase your revenue stream. The second is discover new ideas or at least get feedback. Once you open yourself to a new demographic, they might be able to provide you with feedback in ways that you might not realize. One example is Songza, who when BlackBerry 10 launched, ported their Android application over to BlackBerry thinking, well, you know, it was an easy process, I'm just going to try it out, see what happens. And they got a ton of people downloading it because, you know, at the time, BlackBerry people were really hungry for applications. It was a brand new platform. So they got feedback from that new audience that they totally didn't expect, didn't plan on, and they were able to change their application for the better, and also it motivated them to start working on a native application for the platform as well. And the other one is synergy or just minor incremental costs for major benefit. You've already done a lot of the work. Hopefully you've set yourself up in a way, and we're going to talk about a few of the ways you can do that. You've already set yourself up to be able to leverage a lot of what you've already done when trying to move to a new audience so that you don't have to do a ton of work to get there. So how do you do that? Approach number one, like I mentioned, is cross-platform. And so I have here keep comments, start from scratch. Basically what I'm saying is, from the beginning, make sure you're keeping multiple platforms in mind. And the benefits of that is, number one, avoiding this, multiple code bases. If any of you are developers and you've been doing it for a long time, you know how complicated and large a single code base can get when you're managing versions and you're managing hundreds of files. Imagine doing that times 4 if you're going to target Android, iOS, BlackBerry, and Windows, right? So the goal here of going cross-platform or using a cross-platform framework or engine is to allow yourself the ability to avoid this and to focus solely on a single code base and make it a lot more manageable for yourself. Also, you don't have to verse yourselves in 4 different languages. The second is tooling and resources. If you've experienced mobile development, just learning one single new platform can be daunting, especially if it's new to you, and there's tools, there's the APIs, there's documentation. it's a big beast. And when you have to then move to learning multiple and keeping up with the latest on multiple tracks and different platforms, that can be an issue. It can definitely slow you down, and you can't focus your energy on the stuff you want to be focusing on. Things you have to keep in mind, though, when going cross-platform, some cons, I guess. One is performance. If you are very finicky on eking out every last bit of performance that you can out of the hardware, using a cross-platform framework might not be for you. There are some exceptions to discuss, but if performance is ideal and very important to you, then you might have to go the native route as opposed to cross-platform. And finally, platform-specific features. If you're doing something that a cross-platform framework simply doesn't allow, something that's very specific, like say iBeacon for iOS, you can't obviously use Sencha to do your development or PhoneGap because they haven't implemented that very specific feature for that platform. So you have to keep that in mind. That might restrict you from going this route. But when you're starting out, you have to properly map these things out so that you're aware of what areas you can focus on from a cross-platform perspective and what areas you're going to have to dedicate to a specific platform that's important to you. These are some frameworks. If you're a game developer, these are some frameworks that will help you out and go on the cross-platform route. Don't reinvent the wheel. A lot of these guys have put a lot of work in advance so that you can just simply leverage what's done here. Marmalade and Unity are two big ones that are gaining in popularity. I'm sure everyone's at some point in some way heard of Unity. They allow you to make incredible games without having to put in a whole ton of effort into it, at least in the start. C#, which is heaven to work with, right, compared to C++ and other stuff. So Unity is a great engine. Actually, I have a slide on it. It's, for those of you that don't know, it's a 3D gaming engine that allows you, out of the box, to obtain a lot of functionality. It's cross-platform and allows you to develop, simply, literally deploy to multiple platforms without having to do much changing at all. In fact, if I have time, I'll confirm that with the organizers. I'll show you guys a quick demo that there was a game that was built in Unity for iOS and Android, and they literally, once we worked with Unity and created the BlackBerry 10 plugin for Unity, they literally just hit recompile and the game worked. And it's actually a really great running game. It runs really well on the platform. So definitely something to keep in mind if you're interested in game development. If you're looking at functional apps, here's a lot of great frameworks to look at. Sencha, jQuery, PhoneGap, Cordova, HTML5, obviously a great platform to do cross-platform development with. Actually, I think I have a slide on that as well. This is a little BlackBerry plug, but for HTML5, obviously it's here to stay. It's extremely popular. Many people are well versed in it. You could probably leverage some sort of skill set you currently have to develop for many platforms at once using HTML5. And our browser and WebKit engine that we've developed is of the mobile world, it's the highest standard in compatibility with HTML5 features. So if you're looking to leverage those skills, then BlackBerry is also a great option to develop for. Sencha Touch is one of these cross-platform frameworks that allow you to develop for cross-platform, mainly in the UI side of things. So if you're looking at developing a very basic, not too complex UI that allows you to display content, make use of navigation bars and other mobile features, then Sencha Touch is great. It leverages web technology. It allows you to simply write once and deploy many. Like I said, you can build applications for all the major platforms. Here's an example of, say you just did a standard navigation bar in Sencha. This is kind of what it would look like. This is kind of like iOS before, early iOS, before iOS 7 and stuff like that. But this is kind of what it would look like if you did a default one. And in Sencha, with just a couple of lines of code, you can just theme it to be the BlackBerry navigation bar. The previous one would be up at the top, where most navigation takes place on the previous platform. And then in the BlackBerry platform, all of our navigation is on the bottom, and it automatically handles all of this for you. So it's a great tool to use to do cross-platform UIs with. A lot of this stuff I'm just talking about at a high level because there's a lot of stuff to cover, and I don't know necessarily people's how well versed they are in the various technologies. So this is just more to open up your mind and to hopefully motivate you guys to look into some of this stuff. Sencha Touch also has a lot of great tooling. They have this cool UI. You can do a lot of drag and drop actually, so you don't have to do much actual code writing if you're not well versed. You can still create something very, very quickly using their Sencha Architect program. Here's a few examples on BlackBerry 10. If you look at these applications on various platforms, you'll see a ton of similarities. Mainly they only differ in where things are placed. For instance, like I told you, navigation for BlackBerry is on the bottom. And so this is where they'd have it here in this app, but on the Android app, it would be at the top or maybe just below. But all the theming and stuff is still the same, all the color schemes. They didn't have to do much changing to move from platform to platform. PhoneGap Cordova, I put a little dash there because people are kind of confused as to what the difference is between the two of them. PhoneGap, everyone is familiar with Adobe PhoneGap and that they were the owners of the PhoneGap project, and then they kind of made it open source to Apache. And a bunch of contributors like Google and BlackBerry and IBM are now contributing to the Cordova project where PhoneGap now gets all of its versions from. So basically Adobe said, we're not going to do all the work, we're going to let the open source community do the work, and we're just going to package it and provide some companion tools and create official PhoneGap versions that people can use. So that's a little mix up there. But what PhoneGap allows you to do is to build native mobile experiences using standard web technology. So the theory is there's just one standard API set. All you do is just call these functions, and then it will, when you compile the application, it will do all the conversion for you, mapping to the native API calls. So for standard things like the camera and the contacts, media capture, file system access, all those sort of things that are common across all the mobile platforms, PhoneGap handles for you with one common API set, so you don't have to go learn 4 different languages to do it. Sencha and PhoneGap are actually good companion tools to use. Sencha for the UI, PhoneGap for the more native features in a mobile application, and you use them together to create a cross-platform solution. This is an example, Untapped. Who doesn't know Untapped? Untapped is built using PhoneGap, and basic features like GPS location and other contact access for friends and stuff like that. They used all of that common API set in PhoneGap to achieve this. Another method is hybrid development. This is one I particularly like, especially if you're building content-driven applications. So we have on one end the full mobile browser type app, and then on the far right we have the native application that's fully native. What hybrid does is it allows you to develop the majority of your application in HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, but then create a native shell around it that handles all of the navigation, all of the menus, all of the interaction with the specific platform that you're working with. So in theory, you would have all of your content hosted so you can do dynamically updating content on a server using HTML5, and then you just handle all the navigation within the app using that platform's native coding. And so what you then do is effectively you take the majority of the code that's then reusable across platforms, but you have to do a little bit of platform-specific stuff, but you avoided having to write 4 entire applications. So obviously the benefits of a native, I've gone through a lot of these, right? The benefits of native containers, it allows you to reuse a lot of stuff, dynamically load content, and leverage your existing code. And this is an example of what we've done in Kitchener-Waterloo, where I'm based out of. BlackBerry, in the developer relations team, we built the shell for developers already. So you can see here, use of all the menus and the navigation bar. We just plug in URLs like the person's Facebook page, or their Twitter handle, or their YouTube channel, and it automatically is integrated with the entire BlackBerry operating system, and they just provide the URLs to their mobile content online, right? So we're literally going door to door to restaurants and Chicopee Ski Hill and saying, we already have a mobile app for you, just here's the URL, give us the URLs, we'll whip together something for you. Now you've got an app that isn't just the browsing experience, it's also hooked into VVM, Facebook, Twitter, the share invitation, and so forth, right? This is another example of how to leverage reusability to minimize the amount of effort you have to put into reaching multiple platforms. Second thing that I'll discuss, and second approach, is porting. So in the case where you already have put in a ton of effort into a specific platform and you now want to move to a different platform, how can you do that without putting in a lot of work? Because obviously rewriting is expensive and a pain, and we all realize that. One way you can go about doing that is to leverage a lot of libraries that are compatible across the different platforms. For instance, OpenGL or C++ libraries that have functionality in place that you want to use. You can reuse those, try and be as modular as possible so that you don't have to rewrite a lot of stuff. It's not the most appealing option, but if it's necessary, you got to do it. BlackBerry kind of recognized this pain point, and so when we launched, or we created BlackBerry 10, we didn't strictly do our native language and that's it. We opened up other options for developers because we knew when you're a 0 app platform competing against a 700,000 app platform, right? You need the apps to get the customers. So what we did was we allowed HTML5 to be a first-class citizen on the platform. You can actually launch an application on BlackBerry that's strictly written in HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. And then we also have 2 runtimes that allow people to directly port applications that they already have. One of them is the BlackBerry runtime for Android. and the second one is Adobe Air. So I'll discuss each one of those. The first is the Android runtime. So what we did is we took, because Android is open source, we took all of the code that's responsible for actually running the applications, the application framework, mapped it to the hardware on the BlackBerry, and allowed people that had existing Android applications to simply repackage it and deploy it. When I say 10 minutes, it's actually a lie, it's like 3, right? So as long as you're not reliant on any proprietary APIs, like Google Maps is an example, version 2, we haven't actually done the mapping there yet, or we're not able to, then you can bring your application over. And in fact, we find that over 80% of applications are able to, without a single line of code being changed, are able to be repackaged and deployable on a BlackBerry. And I get a lot of people that are mailing me saying, oh man, I'm using that Plex, it runs just like it does on my S4. It's like, it's amazing, right? So it is the actual runtime, it's not emulation, it's not a simulator, it's the actual runtime that runs. So in our latest release a couple weeks ago, 10.2.1 for BlackBerry's OS, we greatly enhanced the compatibility. Bluetooth is supported now, MAPI version 1 is supported, and a ton of other stuff, especially the share framework, so you can share with other applications and invoke other applications. So if you have an Android application, I strongly urge you to leverage that, because like I said about Songza, once you release to a whole new audience, it doesn't matter how small you think it is, you'd be surprised. It's a lot better, in my opinion, to be a large fish in a small pond than a little tiny minnow in a huge ocean. So that's what I'll say about that. This is the recent tool that we launched. Before it used to all be command line. Now we have a GUI that allows you to just simply browse and select your APK file. And then you just check your options. Do you want to sign it right away or sign it later? Do you want to deploy it directly to a device or a simulator? And just hit package, and the application simply does it all for you. So really handy, really quick, 3 minutes. Adobe Air, this is kind of becoming less relevant, I guess, because a lot of people, not very many developers are developing an action script anymore. But if you do have existing content, this is another one of those areas where, like that, you can rebuild. We have an SDK for Air, and we also have stage 3D support, which is really important for a lot of games. Obviously, HTML5, this is the nice visual image of what I already discussed, where you just put it through the WebWorks machine, is what we call our packager. All of your HTML5 assets, and CSS and JavaScript, and just spit it out. And I could actually show you on here 2 applications side by side. It'd be tough for you to tell which one was the native one and which one was the HTML5 one. So if you are a web developer, I strongly urge you to look into this. This is a good one for iOS developers. Who's heard of Inception Mobile? Yeah, they're just down the road in KW. They're part of Hyperdrive, the accelerator program, and what their mission is to make it as simple as possible for iOS developers to convert their iOS applications to be runnable on BlackBerry and Android. So this is an example of an iOS game that is running on a BlackBerry Z10. This was a demo that was done. People have actually played Temple Run on a BlackBerry, though it isn't official. Inception Mobile is in their beta right now, so you can sign up for it and try it out if you'd like, if you're a developer. I'm not sure of their criteria or anything like that, but I do know that this is something to be watching. If you're an iOS developer, this could be very exciting for you to convert your applications. Because a lot of people target iOS first, and they're just like, they're not quite well versed enough to move to another platform, even though they really want to. And this would be a great way, obviously, to do that. The third approach is very brief. I'm going to touch on it, but repositioning. You could still remain within your platform and reach a new audience just by strictly repositioning what you currently have. One such market is the enterprise market. A lot of people are focusing on consumer. It's so extremely competitive, and there's so much money to be had in the enterprise market that BlackBerry, yeah, we're known for enterprise, but I mean, just aside from that, I strongly urge people to think about, if you're doing this for money and for a living, you should be trying to see if you can position your application or come up with new ideas that target the enterprise space, because while they are kind of slow moving, if you do create something that's worthwhile to them, they will pay you for it, right? So I do have a slide that kind of more talks about BlackBerry and enterprise, but the focus here is on just thinking about the BYOD market as well, because enterprise isn't strictly enterprise now. There's a lot of people that bring their devices into their enterprises to get connected with their work, but they also have a voice, and a very loud one, because they work for the company. So targeting people that we are kind of calling the X-Pro, which are people that are business by day, people by night, and they like to play games and do all that kind of stuff too, targeting them can also be worthwhile. And because they're the people that are professionals and have the money to spend as well. You know, creating an application for the consumer or creating for what you thought was the intended purpose and audience, think about, can I reposition this to capture a new audience, perhaps through marketing or through other means, or adding just a feature or two that might be important to a different segment that could round out the application you currently have. So that's that. With that, I'll take any questions if anyone has any. I did that good a job, eh? Yeah.
What would you say is your biggest challenge as an evangelist such as yourself working at BlackBerry?
Specifically at BlackBerry? Oh, the tough questions right at the gate, eh?
I'm an instructor, I have to.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
You know, to be perfectly honest,
especially when you're competing with Android.
yeah, the challenge varies greatly depending on the geographic location I'm in. For instance, when I go to San Francisco to do events, they go, "What are you doing holding an Android?" Yeah, I'm just like, "This isn't an Android, it's a BlackBerry." They're like, "They're still in business?" Right? So they're completely oblivious. Apple has completely dominated the region, right? And so they have no idea. They know Android because they have to, but Apple has dominated that specific region. So when I go there, it's just like a fighting uphill battle to go, let me give you 5 minutes to show you what I got, right? Like what we can offer, but that's not, it's just their culture. It really depends on the frame of mind that they have. Around here, it's a little bit easier because everyone knows about BlackBerry Canada. The most, I'd say the most difficult part is any new platform has, when you're launching in an already highly competitive market, it's a chicken and egg scenario. The developer will say to you, how many users do you got? And I go, well, I can't get the users until you write the apps. And they go, well, I can't commit the resources until you get the users. And it's a vicious circle. And so that's why, our developer relations team, like kudos to not just myself, but all of us, we had 70,000 apps out of the gate before we had sold a single device, right? So how do you convince 70,000 developers to do that, right? And the answer is we had to build an extremely compelling platform. So that's my challenge, is actually convincing a developer that it's worthwhile to check it out because the platform is actually so compelling. Just put 20 minutes of work in to actually check out what's online, download a tool, try a sample app out, and see how easy it is to actually do it. And now that we have 80% compatibility with Android applications, it gets even easier to say, just port it and try it out. Let me know what you think. Watch your analytics, see what happens if you get downloads.
We've proven that it works.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
What are some of the highest profile applications that use web tech, like PhoneGap or Essentia or any of those like that are on multiple platforms?
Yeah. So I mean, I had a couple examples like for Essentia, there was Flixster that was on there. For PhoneGap, there's Untapped. To be honest, when you're looking at within the App Store, you're trying out applications, sometimes it's really tough to tell because they do that good of a job at designing it, especially when it's the native stuff, right? Like PhoneGap is difficult to detect because it's all happening under the hood. Essentia is a little easier once you get used to developing to kind of identify those things. You'll notice, especially the UI controls in Essentia, once you use it a lot, you'll start to recognize it in other applications. I can't really think of off the top of my head too many other ones specifically, but yeah.
I'm currently looking at an application framework from a company in Montreal, company in Internet. The framework was pretty closely to your definition of your hybrid model, middle between HTML5 and HTML5.
Okay.
Where it required the HTML5 was movable platform, but it required a native wrapper for Now, as I'm looking at this platform there, I'm evaluating, I'm thinking this is very old, like this is 10 years ago technology, this is ridiculous. Why would anybody build this? So until you just put it up on your slide. So my question is, how viable is this sort of how many people are using this kind of a framework? Is this something is this a new way of thinking, or is this kind of old school and it's, with the PhoneGap, you build it once and it works on all the platforms.
Yeah.
Why would anybody build a framework that's hybrid like that?
Right. So, like I said, this is mainly each type of strategy, I guess you could say, has its place. This one, if you already have pre-existing HTML5 source in a mobile site that's predominantly content driven and you want to achieve dynamic content updating, You want to be directly hooked into the native applications like Facebook and Twitter and all of this stuff, and there's some sort of native capability that you really want to hook into, but the majority of what you need to do is already in HTML5 and so forth. It's the approach to take in the sense that you have the most of the source is already available for you to reuse per platform, and there's really just platform-specific things that you want to grab, as opposed to having to rewrite 4 separate native apps or doing something completely web-based that you then don't have that platform specificity that you can leverage. The thing I love about it is that it's leveraging, people get used to certain gestures and certain things on a specific platform. As a user, it trips me out whenever I grab like my iPod or something like that I have to go up to the top left to go back and navigate back. Because I use my BlackBerry so much, and navigation is in the bottom left of the back button, right? So they get used to something like that, and when it trips them up, if it keeps happening with your application, it's not as good of a user experience, and so they're expecting certain gestures and certain things to just work. With that shell we created, it's the menus and the transitions and the navigation that every BlackBerry user has already come to know and love that you can't quite achieve using a strictly web-based approach. So it's a trade-off. I'm not familiar with the framework you're mentioning, though. And you don't think that we will be?
Well, that's where I'm looking at it. Are we going to put our product on what appears to me at first look that this is an archaic way of doing things?
Right.
And you described it on the screen. I'm thinking, well, maybe it's not so archaic.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily archaic. It just has its likes. So, like I said, it predominantly works for content-driven applications, but also if you are someone that is really, really well versed in the web technologies and you can do really cool stuff in a mobile browser, then that's also still relevant for you, and you don't have to deal with any of the pains of integrating with the native platform in a painstaking way when there's samples and already much easier ways natively to do it. Yep.
Thank you, Manny.
All right, thank you.
Great.